Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by Kristi Shimek, whose work includes Pitch Perfect, Bumper in Berlin, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, and the hit Christmas movie Falling for Christmas, starring Lindsay Lohan. Welcome to the show, Kristi.
Thank you for having me.
I gotta ask, how did you get involved with the Lindsay Lohan Falling for Christmas?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. I know one of the producers on the film, David Wolf, and I've worked with him for the last 15 years. We've known each other for a long time. And so when he got brought onto the project, he connected me with Michael and Janine Damian, who are the main creative team of the show. And so I was really lucky. We had a great interview together and we really connected creatively. And so, yeah, it worked out really well.
I'm going to interrupt this interview for 1 second. We want to thank PixelView, one of our sponsors. They're a streaming solution for filmmakers. PixelView lets you stream your work to remote clients for easy collaboration, and it works with both on-set teams and post-production teams. With built-in video chat, you can discuss and make changes in real time and stream directly from your editing software. Or you can use the hardware encoder to stream from DaVinci Resolve or the camera on set. See the promo code and the link in the video description below. How much is tongue-in-cheek, and they're aware of like the cheesiness, because it's essentially a Hallmark Christmas movie on Netflix. So like, how much was like, yeah, we know where we're going with this, and how much is serious, do you think?
We actually had a really great time with the comedy. I would say like we were all totally aware. It was one of those where we watched a lot of comedies before we started, and we wanted everyone to just feel that good time feeling like that we were feeling and that we wanted everyone to go for. So we were all, very aware of the type of comedy we were doing, and, kind of these physical comedy stunts that we had, as well as like funny wink at the audience dialogue. So we definitely knew what we were after when we started.
And was there things, because like, when I watched it, there's like, I think about the ski race between the dad and the other ski person. And it reminded me of those 80s ski movies where like you would cut to them and they'd be skiing down the hill. And then all of a sudden you cut to the close up and it's like in front of a blue screen.
Yeah.
Like how like, was that on purpose? Like you wanted that look, or is that something that just happened in the cutting room?
Yeah, well, some of it was in the cutting room. I mean, of course, we got our dailies in and we were kind of playing around with it. And once we were working with sequences like that, especially, again, these stunt sequences where we're working with stunt people as well as the actors, we really wanted to just kind of jazz it up and make it really fast paced and really fun. And I agree with you. It does kind of have that traditional 80s feel vibe to it, but we were like adding these punch-ins and these zooms and like all these things just to kind of give it that flavor and kind of I think make everyone just feel like it's okay to laugh, it's okay to have a good time with this film, and like here's one of those sequences that is like that.
Now I want to know, like, in terms of comedy, whenever I talk to editors about comedy, one of the tricky things is that you're playing off of like the actor's delivery plays such an important role.
Yeah.
So, how did you work with the footage, or like with Lindsay Lohan's lines with, I think his name is Tad or Tag in the movie.
Tad.
Like in terms of timing and pacing within those deliveries to get the jokes to land.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things with a movie like this is balancing those performances, because I did really enjoy watching everyone's performances, but they all have their own little intricacies with their type of comedy and the way they present lines. And so I would say that is like the deepest dive we did in a movie like this is, how do you get those jokes to land? How do you get those types of comedy to land? And again, I feel like all of the actors in this movie knew what they were going for. So they were very much their character the whole time. I mean, Lindsay was fantastic on the screen, and watching her dailies was a joy, like truly so much fun. You know why she's an A-lister. Like, she is incredible to watch on screen. And then you have George, who I loved. He played Tad. And he knew that his character was a little over the top, a little bit, he's this rich, guy who's out of touch with everyone else. And so he was always in character, and he was giving a lot of improv, which was really fun. So we could like try out different takes, different feels. And but I do think in a comedy like this, that is the part where we really dig in deep, is getting those jokes to land and getting all of that to feel paced and, like the right type of thing for the joke.
Okay, was there a joke that you really thought was funny, but it just couldn't land, or it just didn't fit the story at a moment that you really liked, but you had to get rid of?
There were a couple that like we had more in the fishing shack, on the lake. There was even more there, and I truly fell in love with Tad, like with George. And so I was like, I want all the Tad, like, let's double this. And of course, we eventually had to pull back. So for me, when we initially were cutting, I was like, putting all the Tad in, putting little alts and of course, when it comes to full running time and pace, like we talked about, which is so important in a comedy, we had to pull some of those. But yeah, I would say the fishing shack is one where I was like, there was more there, but it was all wonderful. And what we ended up keeping was great, as well.
I love the fishing shack scene. As someone who used to go ice fishing, it was fantastic. So
that's great.
Now, so what were the performances like when you were getting the rushes in? Like you said, Tad was ad-libbing. Was Lindsay Lohan ad-libbing? What was it like in the rushes?
They all had a bit of a different approach. George did improv probably the most out of everyone, but he was also like the biggest comedic character of the movie. Mm-hmm. So he had a little bit more leeway there. Whereas, of course, Lindsay is the main character. She's holding up the film, and she has to keep us in line as far as the story goes. So she would give little alternates sometimes, but we mostly stuck to the script with her and Cord. And so, but again, they were the two that were like driving the story forward. So we had to get those lines. We had to get their performances in line with, the script. And so yeah, I would say that, but what was nice is that emotionally, all of the main actors would give us multiple different emotions. So sometimes, we'd get a lot of just different things to work with, which is so nice as an editor, because of course, when you're putting two performances together in the edit room, you sometimes need a little bit of difference in emotion and tone from the two different actors.
Interesting. So now, like you're essentially the last rewrite for the script.
Yeah.
So what were some of the changes that might have occurred in the edit suite, or was there structural realignment for the film? Like what happened with that?
We had a couple structure changes. We had a couple of scenes that were all, it does happen in a certain timeline in this movie, so it's not as abstract as others. But we did have a couple scenes kind of by like the laundry room scene and where Tad and Ralph are out in the woods and the sheriff comes in. We did reorder that a little bit from the script, just because when we were watching it on order, we felt like we saw an extra day in there. And we're like, how long has Sierra been gone? So like once you start seeing those things in the edit, sometimes it's just based on what happened at the location. Sometimes I think they had changed one scene from night to day, and so that's when we realized, after seeing the footage in order, we're like, oh, there's an extra day here now because they had to change it for the locale. And so it's stuff like that for a movie like this that has to go about in 4 days straight, that you change kind of little structural things, but most of it was pretty straight from the script as far as structure.
What would you say is your favorite scene that you got to cut?
Oh my gosh, there's so much that I really love about this film. I really enjoyed the mountaintop. I got to play around with the comedy in that scene a lot, which was so fun for me. And the stunt scenes were really fun for me too, because stunt work is a really good way for me to like work my editorial muscles. It takes a lot of time and patience to get it right. And there were quite a few in this movie. And it was really fun to be able to try that out. I've done stunts before, but there was a lot more in this movie. And so that was really fun for me. I really did enjoy the stunt sequences. But then also balancing it with like where they're dancing together at the lodge. Like there's a lot of really nice drama in this movie as well that's really gentle, and I enjoy that too.
What were some of the challenges you faced when cutting this?
One of the biggest challenges, and I think we're all used to this in this, post-COVID time, was we were totally remote on this show, which actually I think has a lot of benefits because we are able to like take a little bit more time than sometimes we did when we were in person. Like, you go into a session, you do a session, and then you have some time away where you can think about some of the problems that you're facing. So I think there's some goods to it, but it is hard sometimes to not be in the room. We were still ever casting every day on this show, so we were in a room together online, but it's still, sometimes there's just a you can explain things differently when you're like showing it right then and you're in the room together. But yeah, it was overall that worked really well. I mean, me and Michael and Janine worked really creatively and really well together. And like I said, the Evercast was practically the same as being in the room together. But yeah, like now that there's so much work from home, that it's just kind of different than it was a few years ago when we were just, you knew you'd be in the studio together and you'd be in for this many months and that was it,
Do you prefer one of the ways over the others, or because like some people I talk to are like, oh, I never want to go back to work, and others are like, I got to get it out of my house.
I do think there's good and bad to both. I do like that the work from home gives me more time, for personal life, but also for that kind of quiet time, just quiet time to sit by yourself and be like, I'm working out this problem in my head. But I do miss seeing people in the office and going into the studio. The show that I was on when we went down for the first time, when COVID hit, I loved that team. We had like it was called Next, and it was this TV show, and I love that team, and I miss that camaraderie and being able to get lunch with people and get to know people better. I think one of the hardest things about being away from the studio is not being able to really get to know each other in the like trenches in that way.
Now it's kind of a selfish question, but you have a bunch of posters behind you, and it looks like it's
Yes.
Jaws, Metropolis, and I can't see the other. What are
Star
they?
Wars and King Kong and Jurassic Park.
Are those your favorite films, or is that just like?
Yeah, a lot of inspiration. Yeah. And then we have Indiana Jones on the wall. It's, they're just kind of my inspiration posters. Sorry, I'm going to say that again. They're just kind of my inspiration posters. And yeah, some of my favorite movies that just remind me to, what we're all doing this for.
Yeah. Now, when you get the script, how much, like, do you make notes in there, or is there like emotional beats that you highlight? Like, how do you approach the script?
Yeah, I do. I read the script multiple times before the show even starts, because I feel like when you read it the first time, you pull out really different things than like the next time, or when you've signed to a show and you're like, okay, I'm digging in, like this is the, what I'm doing. So I definitely always make notes. I make a lot of tone and action notes. I actually usually also write out each scene on a 3x5 card with like a little description and the emotion, and then I'll like lay them out, because if you do have to do structural changes, especially down the road, it really helps me to be like physically see where they should move and kind of see where the emotional arcs like visually where they could be or where they should be. And so I do stuff like that just to help me kind of get ready for the emotional arcs that I will be seeing in the footage, as well as, or what I expect. And then of course, when you get dailies, it depends on, how it was shot and how it was done. But it just kind of helps me get in the mindset of the script. And yeah, I always read it multiple times, and I read it as I'm doing dailies as well, like each scene and things like that.
So what is it you look for in a script then when you're choosing a project?
I really like, I'm very big on character. And so for me, like if the characters speak to me, and that's a big part of it. And then I guess the tone too, as well, like if I'm reading a script and I really just connect with it and connect with the material, then then I'll definitely take it on, or talk, at least conversate more, and see if we align. But yeah, I definitely look for character and tone. That's like two of my biggest things.
So because right now there's a lot of genre-based films, there's a lot of hero films. Is there a particular genre or series of films that you would be interested in jumping on?
I actually really like horror and thrillers. I'm like, I know I've been doing a lot of comedies lately, but I like, well, I like a lot of genres too. To be fair, I like it all. But I'd love to be on something like Midnight Mass or The Haunting of Hill House or, something like that. I just think those series are so incredible and so well done. And so, I always enjoy a little something like that.
They're all creepy. The thing I loved about The Haunting of Hill House was that they held back on the jump scares until like episode
Yes.
7 or whatever it was when she jumps out.
Yeah.
It was so
Yeah.
good. So
I agree. I like I'm a big slow burn person too. So I also like slice of life movies, where it's just, I love those slow burns where you're just discovering the story and the characters and things like that.
now I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
It's funny because I just said Midnight Mass. But I also like, I like movies like Shazam, one movie. I mean, obviously this is from when I was young, but I watch Hook from Steven Spielberg's Hook all of the time because it's one of the movies that was like seminal for me. It like reminds me why I got into it. It's one of those movies where I'm just like if I'm having a rough day, turn on Hook and I'm like, yes, that movie. It's just like, that's what meant something so much to me,
Well, it's so weird because like I've heard people be like, "Oh no, that's not a good movie," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
I know. It's like, I know people say the same thing to me. They're like, Hook, really? I'm like, look, let me give you an essay on how good that movie is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Yes, thanks for having me. This was a delight.
Thanks. And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Raquel. Thanks for watching. Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.